In this world, there are several different species roaming the planet, each with their own special strengths and abilities. And then there are humans like Light who are pretty much useless. One day, Light leaves his home in hopes of becoming an adventurer and heads to the big city so he can sign up. Upon arrival, he meets one of the receptionists there and she helps him through the registration process. Since this is his first time registering at the guild, she tells him he will be starting at F rank, and just to make sure Light won't be completely worthless, she asks him if he at least has a gift he can use, and Light excitedly informs her that his ability is gacha gambling. The receptionist freezes up for a moment because she doesn't think she heard him right, but it's exactly what it sounds like. Light has the ability to summon a gacha wheel, and by pressing it, he gets a random item each time. He wants to give her a demonstration, so he pushes the button, and the item he receives is a bent fork. Okay, let's hear him out. That one was probably just a fluke, so he tries again, but this time he just gets some food. And it's not even the good kind either. The receptionist sighs and politely tells Light he's never making it out of F rank with an ability like that. Light asks her if there is any work he can accept as an F ranker, and she directs him to the bulletin board where all the available jobs are posted. But on top of being useless, he's never been to school, so he doesn't know how to read. The receptionist understands his struggle, so she takes out a list and tells Light that the best options for him at the moment are the firewood gathering, soil hauling, or landscaping jobs, but the pay is barely scraping minimum wage, so he won't earn much from it. Light says he'll happily do it, so later that day, he is out doing as much manual labor as his little body can handle. And by nightfall, he has barely earned enough money to cover his lodging expenses. However, as he is walking down the street, a group of beastmen happen to be passing by, and they immediately clock Light as a victim, so they intentionally bump into him and steal his money. Light begs them to give it back because without it, he's going to have to spend the night on the street. But the beastmen don't care, and frankly, neither does anyone else since regular humans are at the bottom of the species hierarchy, so no one is willing to stand up for him. Light sits in the mud while all the people passing by call him useless trash for no reason, until eventually, someone actually stops to lend him a hand. Light takes the woman's hand thinking she's a fellow human, but when he realizes she's an elf, he recoils in fear because he thinks he's about to be taken advantage of again. The elf tells him he doesn't have to worry, and to prove it, she gets down on her knees in the mud just to hug him. Light can hardly believe that an elf would treat a human like him with such kindness, but she doesn't seem to be lying, so Light decides to go along with it. She introduces him to the rest of her party members and explains that they are the Concord of Tribes, a party that incorporates members from all 9 races across the world with the goal of eradicating discrimination among races. The leader is a beastman named Garou, and the elf's name is Sasha. They already got members from most of the different races, so now the only thing they need is a human to become their 9th member, and that's why they want to ask Light to join their party. This all sounds good on paper, but of all the people they could get, they really had to choose the powerless and defenseless 12-year-old boy to join their special party. At least there's no baby oil this time. From then on, whenever Concord would go on a mission, Light would join them as their baggage handler, but he's still just as useless as he was before because not even 10 minutes in, he almost gets one-shotted by a giant snake monster. Fortunately, Drago and Sasha manage to save him before anything bad happens, but Sasha tells him he really needs to get his act together because this is one of the world's most dangerous dungeons and literally anything in here could kill him, so he needs to make sure he sticks close to the team. Light apologizes for his mistake, but Sasha doesn't want him to feel too bad about himself, so she just asks him to come closer so she can check if he's hurt or not. While she's busy looking after Light, the others come over and start teasing Sasha for always doting on Light any chance she gets. They are done here, so the group continues moving further into the dungeon with Light in the center so nothing bad can happen to him. But once they get to a narrow section of the path, Garou says this will be a good place to stop. Light assumes he means he wants them to take a break, so he sets his bag down and starts making some tea for everyone, but Drago tells him that won't be necessary because they are actually here to banish him from the party. Light can't believe what he just heard, so he asks them if this is some sort of prank, but literally everyone in the party, including Sasha who was being so nice to him a minute ago, suddenly does a 180 and calls Light an ugly, brainless, good-for-nothing human. Light doesn't understand what's going on, so they all explain to him that they've been pretending to like him this entire time, and that whole thing about wanting to get rid of discrimination. That was a total lie. In fact, they are some of the most racist people you'll ever meet, so they've been dying to get rid of Light since the day he joined them. If that's the case, then Light asks why they even bothered asking him to join in the first place, so Garou tells him they were only after him because of his skill. Light doesn't understand what he means since his gacha skill is as useless as it gets, but while that may be true, it's similar to the skill of the Mastro, and the Concord's higher-ups were interested in seeing if Light's skill would evolve into something that's actually useful, so they were told to be nice to him until then, even though they didn't want to. However, those same higher-ups recently decided that Light was a lost cause, so now the party has no reason to act like they care about him in the slightest. Light can't wrap his head around everything they just said, and the group realizes they might have let too much information slip, but it's not like it's going to matter soon, because Light isn't leaving this dungeon alive. His eyes go wide as soon as he hears them say that, and a second later, Garou uses his claws to slash him across the face, making it very clear that they really do intend to kill him. He takes off running to get away from them, but they all just laugh and tell him that even if he did manage to escape, he'd just end up dying to a random monster in the dungeon. With that said, they think it'll be much more fun to kill him with their own hands, so Sasha takes her bow and shoots him through the thigh to stop him from escaping. They are all enjoying the sound of Light's terror-filled cries, and Garou begins beating him up to get him to cry some more. But the others tell him to quit it because their cover story is meant to be that Light was killed by a surprise monster attack, so they can't give him any suspicious injuries. Light desperately tries to crawl away because he doesn't want to die here. But with his leg injured like this, Garou tells him there's no way he's going to escape. Even so, he continues trying to get away, and as luck would have it, he managed to trigger a teleportation trap. The trap sends him straight to one of the deeper floors, so Light is now safe from the Concord members, but that doesn't mean he is going to survive this. He is well aware of how weak he is, so he knows he's a goner the second a single monster shows up. He tries coming to terms with the fact that this is the end of the road, but he doesn't understand why all this happened to him. For the past 4 years, all the members of Concord had treated him with respect and kindness, but it all turned out to be a lie. They were just using him because they thought he was a Mastro, and when they found out he wasn't, they tried to kill him laughing in his face. He absolutely refuses to let them get away with that. No matter how hard it is, he swears that he will make it out of here alive and kill them all, even if it's the last thing he ever does. However, just then, Light hears something walk up behind him, and to his horror, he finds a level 1000 stone chimera staring him down. Even the strongest adventurers only have a few hundred levels, and he has never seen a monster like this before, so that must mean he was teleported to one of the lowest parts of the abyss. As the monster approaches him, he practically pisses himself in fear because he knows there is no way he can beat this thing. All he has right now is his Gacha ability, and has a terrible track record when it comes to being useful. He has no other option, so he frantically starts pushing the button over and over, hoping that it will save him, and miraculously, as the monster lunges at him, his Gacha wheel transforms and a beautiful maid girl appears, destroying the monster in an instant. Light is speechless after what he just witnessed, so he just sits there as the girl walks up to him. She kneels before Light and puts her hand on his cheek to heal his wound because she couldn't bear the sight of such scars on his beautiful body. Light is amazed because all the pain is gone now. The maid refers to him as Master and asks what his name is, so he tells her that he is called Light, and right there and then she swears to serve him with eternal loyalty for the rest of her life. Her name is Mai, and she is known as the Ever-Seeking Maid. As for her level, it's over 9,000. She says she is an ultra-rare pull from Light's Gacha skill, so her very being is bound to him, but Light is having trouble processing all this since he has always thought his Gacha skill was completely worthless, so it should be impossible for someone as amazing as Mai to come out of it. Mai asks him for permission to approach his ability so she can determine its true nature. Light is surprised to learn that Mai has an appraisal ability, but to be clear, she tells him that it's only one of her many skills. Light tells her she's free to appraise him, so she begins the scan, and she is truly amazed by what she sees. Light's Gacha skill has dozens of layers of protection woven into it, so only people of Mai's level are able to see its true capabilities, and from what she can tell, it can be used an unlimited number of times. The rewards that it generates depend on the surrounding mana density and go all the way from ranks like EX and Super Ultra Rare to Normal and Error. Light doesn't really understand what Mai is talking about, so she explains that there is always mana present in the atmosphere. But the mana density on the surface is quite low, which reduces the chances of unlocking a useful reward like Mai to almost zero. However, in the deepest part of a dungeon like this, the mana density is incredibly high, so the probability of a successful summon shot up exponentially. Mai assumes Light must have intentionally ventured down to the depths of the dungeon to bring out the true potential of his gift, but that couldn't be further from the truth. He came down here with people he thought he could trust, but they all ended up betraying him. They slashed his face, shot him in the leg, and laughed at him the entire time they did it. All Light ever wanted was to give his family a better life, but they tried to kill him just because he's a human. He begins yelling that he will never forgive them for as long as he lives, but Mai pulls Light into a hug for comfort because she hates seeing him so sad. She knows she could never understand the suffering Light must have felt, but she knows how to make him feel better. She assures Light that as soon as he gives the order, she will have the heads of those backstabbers lined up on the floor within the hour, but he gets up and tells her she can't do that. Mai tells him that scoundrels like those people do not deserve mercy, but he didn't tell her to wait because he thinks killing them would be wrong. Rather, it's because he wants to be the one to get revenge with his own two hands. He fell for their trick and nearly died at their hands because he was too weak to defend himself, so he wants to become strong enough to make sure nothing like that ever happens to him again. He knows it sounds far-fetched for a weakling like him to say he wants to be strong, but Mai doesn't think it's impossible at all. She swears that if he wants to become strong enough to exact revenge on his own, then she will do everything within her power to make that happen. We cut to 3 years into the future, and right in the middle of the Abyss dungeon, Light has used his gacha skill to build an entire nation and summon an army of powerful servants who are so down bad for him that they pay good money to get a cup of his bathwater. As he and May walk down the halls, she gets really annoyed by all the fairy maids constantly trying to get Light's attention, but Light doesn't see it as a problem since it's just a sign of their devotion to him. They head out into the city to greet Light's people, and everyone here truly loves and respects him as their leader. One even brings up that the monthly sweet supply is running low, and Light promises to look into getting some more. He thinks it might be a supply chain issue since the city has way more people now than it did 3 years ago, so he will have to adjust things to satisfy the increased demand. In the meantime, Light asks May if she knows what the other super elite servants he summoned are up to right now, so she tells him that Oyuki is busy napping out the area around the Abyss, and Ellie has been busy researching new magic to help Light achieve his goals. He's grateful that everyone is doing so much to help him out, but May didn't mention anything about Nezuna, so he wonders what she's been up to lately. May explains that Nezuna is just patrolling the inside of the castle for now, but it's not because they need added security inside, it's because she's too dumb to help with anything that doesn't involve fighting. Meanwhile, inside the castle, we see Nezuna cheerfully strolling through the hallways without a care in the world, but as long as she's not causing trouble, they usually just let her do whatever she wants. As for Light, it is now time for his daily training session, so he goes to meet with one of his elite summons, Jack. Even though he has all these powerful subordinates to protect him, he still wants to be strong enough to handle things on his own, so he often goes out to spar with Jack, and after 3 years of this routine, he is capable of going blow for blow with him. Back in the castle, Nezuna is still walking around aimlessly until she happens to run into a few of the maids handling cleaning duty for today. She tells them she's on a super important patrol mission right now, and the maids all tell her that she's doing a really good job, but they are really just trying to flatter her into doing them a favor. And it's working. Now that she's in a good mood, they tell her that there's a special place that they'd like her to patrol for them, and Nezuna agrees to listen to their request without a second thought. A few minutes later, Nezuna knocks on the door to Light's bedroom, but to her surprise, May is the one who answers. She asks Nezuna what she's doing here, and Nezuna proudly states that she's on patrol, which is technically true. But now that she thinks about it, she wonders what May is doing in Light's room in the first place, since he's supposed to be training with Jack right now. May tries to make up an excuse and says she was just cleaning Light's room for him while he is away, but while she was talking, Nezuna manages to slip inside, and it definitely doesn't look like May was doing much cleaning in here. In fact, if Nezuna had to guess, she'd say May was rolling around on Light's bed and sniffing his pillow until a moment ago. May panics and says that was just part of her special bed-making technique, and Nezuna doesn't question how dumb that sounds for you in 1 second, so she starts praising May for doing such a good job. Speaking of jobs, she finally remembers that the fairy maids asked her to deliver a message to May, and it basically says they are tired of her keeping Light's room to herself all the time because they want to clean his stuff too. Nezuna doesn't really understand what the big fuss is about, but May receive the message loud and clear, so she gives Nezuna a little reward for her trouble and sends her on her way. Now that she's done delivering the message, she heads down to the pastry shop to buy herself a treat with the money May gave her, and afterwards she happens to run into Oyuki on one of the terraces. Nezuna is surprised to see her here since she thought Oyuki was out on a surveillance mission, but she just keeps mewing, so Nezuna has no idea what she's saying. Light is usually able to decipher what those mews are meant to mean, but Nezuna's best guess is that Oyuki wants Nezuna to destroy the entire forest for her for no reason. Nezuna would definitely do that too, if no one corrected her, so Oyuki is forced to break character and speak normally to tell Nezuna that she just came to deliver a section of the map that she completed. Nezuna laughs and tells Oyuki she should have just said that from the beginning, so she takes the map and heads off to continue her patrol. Her next stop is the throne room, and after making sure there's no one around, she starts hugging Light's throne because she hasn't gotten to see him at all today. But while she is doing that, she suddenly hears a loud crunch sound, and to her horror, she realizes that she just broke the wing off one of the throne fixtures. She's going to get in a lot of trouble if anyone finds out about this, so she frantically fixes it just enough so it will break as soon as someone else touches it, and then she bolts out of there. Outside, Light and Jack are finally done with their training session, so they call it a day and head to the baths to relax. Jack tells Light he is getting really good at controlling his body, and there aren't many people down here who are strong enough to keep up with him anymore. The same probably goes for the people on the surface, but he reminds Light that he shouldn't let himself get too cocky, because they don't know what might be waiting for them on the surface. Light says he understands that he needs to be prepared, and he promises not to let his power go to his head so there will be no mistakes when the time comes for his revenge. Meanwhile, Mei has called the 4 fairy maids who gave Nazuna that message into her office, and she does not seem happy. She asks them if they know why she has summoned them here today, and they try to feign ignorance, but then Mei reads out their letter word for word, and she already got Nazuna to tell her that they were the ones who wrote the letter, so there's no way for them to weasel their way out of this mess. They all shuffle backwards and start apologizing for what they wrote, but they try to downplay their actions by saying they only did it out of concern for Mei. They say they know she's been busy lately, so they wanted to lighten her load by taking over the cleaning of Light's room for her, and maybe sniffing a pillow or two while they were at it. But that's not the point. Mei is also disappointed by the fact that they made Nazuna do their dirty work for them, since she might have considered it if they had the guts to deliver their message in person. She tells them that their request has been denied, and until further notice, they will be assigned to cleaning the entire corridor that leads to the throne room. And they aren't allowed to use any magic to speed up the process either. The maids can't believe Mei would give them such an impossible task because it'd take forever to clean that huge corridor by hand, but Mei doesn't think it'd be that hard. If anything, she says she's doing them a favor since level 500s like them need to put in a lot of hard work if they ever hope to reach her level. Additionally, Mei informs them that she is heading to the surface soon on a mission for Light, so the 4 of them are going to have to pick up the slack while she's gone. Later on, the 4 maids gather in their room, and they are really upset by the fact that Mei is punishing them for making a simple complaint. They don't think it's fair that she's the only one who gets to bask in Light's scent, but Mei is the strongest of them all, so there's no way they can stand up to her. Prime suggests that they could try poisoning her, but Hifumi already looked into that, and Mei is immune to all forms of poison, so there's no way it'd work. They all resign themselves to defeat and start groaning about how much they want to clean Light's room and sniff his bed. Hifumi takes it a step further and says she wants to use one of Light's used forks, but hearing her say that out loud makes it sound weird, so the others all call her a degenerate and say she's taking it too far. Hifumi defends herself and says everyone here would probably do the same thing if they got the opportunity, and they can't deny it, so they really are just as bad as Hifumi. Now that they think about it, Mei isn't much better than they are either, since she was all up in Light's bed earlier today, and the fact that she was the first one Light summoned means that for who knows how long she and Light were alone in the dungeon together. And at the time, Light's level was so low that he wouldn't have been able to defend himself from any monsters, so he was probably clinging to Mei the entire time. They'd all go mad with jealousy at the thought that Mei might have done indecent things with Light at some point, and Hifumi comes up with the bright idea of turning their jealous energy into a curse, so they all sit at the table and begin chanting over and over for Mei to die. Unfortunately for them, Mei has been standing outside their door this entire time, and she could hear every word they just said about her, so she asks them if they have anything to say for themselves. The 4 cower behind the table and begin telling Mei that they would never actually wish for anything bad to happen to her, but Mei clearly heard them praying for her death, so she asks what that was about. The group eventually admits that they were just jealous because Mei was summoned first and got to spend a lot of alone time with Light because of it, but Mei tells them that nothing indecent happened between her and Light. It took around 3 months for Light to summon Oyuki, and in that time Mei was busy teaching him about martial arts and world history, so no debauchery took place. The girls are relieved to hear that, but then Mei continues speaking and tells them that she had originally come here to apologize for giving them such a harsh punishment earlier, but after what they just did, she thinks she may need to be even harsher than before. She tells them that they will now be required to clean the entire throne room in addition to the corridor. The 3 kneel at Mei's feet and beg her to reconsider because there's no way they'd be able to clean the giant throne room by themselves, but Mei tells them they shouldn't have thought of that before they decided to prey on her downfall. They are forced to get to work immediately, and at this rate, they might have to work through the night to get it all done. But while Hifumi was dusting off the throne, the wing of the broken fixture falls off, and they all go silent as they realize just how screwed they are. All the while, Nazuna is lying in her bed without a care in the world. The next morning, Light heads outside and meets Oyuki, Nazuna, and Ellie out by the front gate. Nazuna is particularly excited to see Light since she didn't get to talk to him at all yesterday. Light wants to go straight to the point, but just then a rockhound appears out of nowhere, and even though Light is strong enough that it isn't a threat to him, he still begins trembling with fear a little because he remembers the day he nearly died to one of these. The others are enraged that a mere hound would dare to frighten their lord, so they start discussing plans to wipe its kind from existence. The hound didn't even do anything yet, but it can tell that one wrong move would spell its doom, so it lies down on the floor and starts whimpering for its life. Light tells the others that there's no need to get so upset because he's fine, and he even goes over to pet the hound to show them that it doesn't bother him. He apologizes to the hound for scaring it so much, and if he hadn't stepped in, they'd have actually wiped out its entire species without hesitation. They ask Light if there's a reason he told them to meet him out here, and he says May told him everything is ready for the mission, so they can finally head out to exact his revenge. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the world, Garou is walking through a Beastman town, and as the Beast hero, everyone here is fawning over him. In fact, this one dude in the back even offers to pimp out his own sister, but Garou isn't interested right now. Just then, he spots a poor human sifting through the trash for something to eat, and this kid was nowhere near Garou, but he decides to take a detour just so he can knock the child to the ground and spit on his face for fun. Afterwards, Garou and his team of lackeys head to a private room so they can begin glazing him. Figuratively, of course. They tell him they think it's amazing that he went from a poor beast slum child to the frontrunner to become the next chief. Even the current village chief has acknowledged his power, so they ask him how he managed to get this far. Garou brags that he just uses his instincts to pick out the best jobs for himself, like that one he took 3 years ago. He got paid a lot to pretend to be part of a race unification party, and all he had to do was finish off a human who was suspected of being a master. He never actually confirmed whether Light was dead or not, but with how weak he was, there's no way he could have survived down there on his own, so he thinks it'd be best to just forget about the brat. However, a moment later, May walks into the room asking about Light. Garou's lackeys yell that she has no right to speak to him like that, but Garou says it's fine because he would like to hear what business she has with him. May explains that she's a maid serving Lord Light, and she makes up a story claiming that Light is of noble blood and she has been searching all over the continent for him. Garou is skeptical since the people who hired him for that mission did a thorough background check on Light, and Light himself never mentioned anything about being a noble, but May definitely looks like a rich noble's maid, so he sees this as a good opportunity to make some cash. He asks her what she wants with him, so May says that she recently discovered that Light supposedly passed away in the dungeon 3 years ago, so she would like Garou to lead her to his last known location so she can pay her respects. She even offers to pay him in solid gold for the trouble, but Garou's senses are warning him that this whole thing is a trap. It seems way too fishy that she's willing to pay so much just for them to lead her into the dungeon, but since May looks like an ordinary human female, Garou brushes off his concerns because there's no way a human would be able to beat him. He agrees to lead her to Light's last known location, but he says he's not doing this for the money, he's doing this because Light was a good friend of his, and he wants to help out in any way he can. May knows that everything he just said is complete BS, but she has to stay in character, so she thanks him, and a month later, the group is closing in on the spot Light went missing. However, Garou has no intention of actually fulfilling the terms of the agreement, so as soon as they get there, he plans to attack May and let her die the same way Light did. Once they arrive at the spot, May falls to her knees in despair at the thought of how hopeless Light must have felt back then. Meanwhile, Garou tries to spin a story about Light getting attacked by a monster and falling into a teleportation trap before anyone could save him. But as he is speaking, several of his men begin blocking off the exit so May won't be able to escape once they attack. They are just about to pounce on her. But May suddenly says that if only she had been with Light from the start, then he wouldn't have been tricked and betrayed by such lowlives. As soon as he hears her say that, Garou panics and backs away because no one aside from the other Concord party members and the higher-ups know about what really happened here. He demands to know how she found out about that and accuses her of being a spy from one of the other races, but May feels insulted by that statement. She is and will always be a maid dedicated to serving Lord Light with all her being, and for Garou to suggest that she's anything is a crime punishable by death. Garou feels a terrifying pressure coming from May, and even though she's just a human, his instincts are telling him to get the hell out of here right now. However, just as May was able to lose her cool and plaster the wall with Beastman blood, Light shows up and tells her to stop because Garou is his prey to deal with. Garou and his men were stunned. None of them had heard Light approaching. Garou couldn't believe his eyes. He hadn't even considered the possibility that Light could have survived. Light casual says he is back to get his revenge, but Garou begins to laugh because he thinks it's hilarious that a level 15 human like Light thinks he is strong enough to get revenge on someone like him who is level 150. Garou has no idea how Light managed to make it this far, but he's sure that if he kills Light and brings him back now, then he will be promoted to chief in no time. Light sighs and asks him if he's really not going to ask him how he managed to survive before resorting to violence, but Garou just assumes Light got lucky and was saved by May after he was teleported, which is actually exactly what happened. Garou orders his men to attack Light, so two immediately charge forward to strike, but before they could get too close, their heads are suddenly divorced from their bodies by May. Garou's remaining men couldn't even keep track of May's movements, so they are starting to freak out, but Garou tells them to calm down because he's sure that was just a fluke. Meanwhile, Light thanks Mei for taking the initiative to protect him, but he says he can handle things on his own from here, so he just wants her to guard the exit and make sure no one leaves. Garou tells his men there's no need to worry because they can't possibly lose to a pair of inferior humans, but Light is starting to get sick of listening to Garou go on and on about how he is so much better than humans when in reality, he is the weak one here. Garou doesn't believe that for even 1 second because it is well known that all humans are weak and have little mana compared to the other races, so they could never be weaker than Light. If that's what he truly believes, then Light asks him why 2 of his men have their heads rolling on the floor if they are all stronger than him, but Garou just dismisses that as a careless mistake. He and his goons then proceed to jump at Light, so he calmly closes his eyes and proceeds to dog walk them while barely lifting a finger. Garou falls to the ground wide-eyed because he just got hit harder than ever before, and he couldn't even see it coming. Light stands over his body and asks him if this is really the best he and his so-called superior race can accomplish, but Garou can't stand the fact that Light is looking down on him, so he decides to use his trump card and smashes a necklace to the ground, summoning a level 500 Fenrir to take care of Light for him. He proudly yells that this is the end of the road for Light, but Light tells him that level 500 is still way too weak to be a challenge for him. Garou thinks Light must have gone insane from fear. There's no way he could possibly defeat a Fenrir on his own. He tells him to get down on his knees and beg if he wants a painless death. Light can see that the power difference here hasn't sunk in yet, so he sets his staff aside and tells Garou he won't move from this spot, so he is free to hit him with his best attack. Garou is still convinced that Light must be bluffing, so he charges up his Fenrir's Howling Beast Blast and hits Light with enough energy to vaporize a small fortress. However, when the dust settles, Light is still standing, unharmed and unmoved. He thinks it's a little embarrassing that Garou was bragging so much about an attack that barely did anything. He also thinks it's weird that Garou keeps calling his summon a Fenrir when it's barely strong enough to be classified as a Fenrir puppy. He then pulls out a summon card and says he will show Garou what a real Fenrir looks like right before summoning a wolf god. This is a level 9000 Fenrir that goes beyond anything Garou has ever seen in his life, and after Light orders it to take care of Garou's summon, it literally just blows some air in the direction of Garou's wolf, and it is suddenly frozen in a block of ice. Seeing Light casually pull out a wolf that was able to no-diff his summon finally makes Garou realize how screwed he is, but Light tells him the wolf god was just for show, because he could have taken care of Garou's summon on his own if he had wanted. And to make the difference in strength absolutely clear, Light enables his status screen to show Garou that he is currently level 9,999. He is absolutely terrified now because he didn't even know levels could go up that high, and he is starting to think that Light is an imposter. But it's not like it matters whether this is the real Light or not, since he's definitely going to kill Garou with how things are going. He throws down his weapons and his pride and begins begging Light to spare his life. He says he was just following his country's orders and he never would have betrayed him otherwise. He looks up, hoping that Light will have mercy on him. But before any of that, Light says he has a few questions for Garou. First, he asks him about the masters that his higher-ups asked him to find, but Garou says he doesn't actually know what they are. Light then asks him why those same higher-ups ordered Garou and the others to kill him after confirming that Light wasn't a master, but Garou really doesn't have any information. He just did as he was told. Light then asks the rest of the beast men if they know anything about the masters, and they all lie that they do in hopes of getting Light to spare them. But in the next moment, Mei slices them all to bits for daring to state falsehoods in front of Lord Light. Light then turns back to Garou and says he has one final question to ask, but in case he was thinking about lying, he should know that Mei's eye of judgment can tell whether he is being honest or not, and he won't like what happens if she finds out he is lying. Since Garou's intuition is so sharp, Light asks him if he thinks it would be possible to win a war against the surface nations as he is now. Garou gulps in hesitation, but he eventually tells Light that his incredible strength would certainly give him an advantage early on in the battle, but he would eventually lose. He is still only one person, so winning an entire war against nations that have countless soldiers, weapons, and items at their disposal would be practically impossible. Garou thinks Light will be upset by the answer he just gave, but Light can tell that Garou was telling the truth and he already expected as much. However, he says there's something he wants to show Garou, so he pulls out a teleport card and transports both Garou and Mei to the throne room. Garou covers his head in fear because he doesn't know what Light has planned for him, but when he opens his eyes, he is left speechless as he sees Light's army in all their glory. Light walks up to his throne, and once he is there, he asks all of his subordinates to display their levels so Garou can see how powerful they truly are. To Garou's horror, he finds out that most of Light's army is above level 5,000, and even the weakest ones are still level 1,500. Now that Garou has seen his true military power, Light asks him if it would be possible to win a war against the surface with an army like this, and the look on his face tells Light all he needs to know. Now that he has confirmed that he can win as a reward, Light says he will forgive Garou for all the pain he caused back then. Psych, Light says he is going to put Garou through constant suffering that will make him beg for death, and Garou knows there is nothing he can do about it, because at this point, Light might as well be a god of destruction. The next day, Light returned to his hometown to find his family and bring them to his dungeon city, but unfortunately, by the time they arrived, all he found waiting for him was a pile of rubble and decaying flesh. Apparently, the village had been destroyed roughly 6 months ago by some unknown forces and no one was spared. Light searches the village for corpses so he can hold a proper funeral for them. And to his relief, he doesn't find any bodies belonging to his siblings, so he believes they must still be alive out there somewhere. However, his parents weren't so lucky. Gold asks Light if he is alright since this must be very difficult for him to process, but he says he will be fine. For now, they need to focus on the mission at hand, so he asks Gold and Nemumu to help gather as much information as possible. While they may now know that their military is strong enough to contend with the world's forces, it would be foolish to march into war right away, so he wants to find out more details regarding the strength of each nation. Additionally, he is fairly certain that the destruction of his hometown had something to do with the fact that he was suspected to be a master, so he wants to find out what a master is and why it is worth shedding so much blood over. If he finds out that this is just a case of some wealthy bastards getting greedy for power, then he swears that he will burn the world to ash and then force-feed the cinders to the people behind all this. Gold understands why Light is so angry, but he warns him to keep his rage in check once they are around other people, because the energy he is releasing could kill a regular person instantly. Light apologizes for the slip-up and pulls out an item called the Fool's Mask to suppress his energy and hide his identity. He then says goodbye to the graves of his mom and dad and apologizes for not being able to save them. He, Nemumu, and Gold then begin flying towards the city of Dagas, but Nemumu is curious since she doesn't know what Light plans to do once they arrive. Just then, Gold tells Nemumu that she should be careful about how she addresses their lord while they are on the surface, and Light explains to her that referring to him by his real name would tip off the people behind Concord, so instead he plans to go by the name Dark while they are on the mission. Nemumu says she understands, and as for what Light plans to do in Dagas, he tells her that he is going to register himself as an adventurer under the name Dark, and as he rises through the ranks, he will be able to gather more and more information from the guild Big Shots. After a little while, Nemumu spots the city of Dagas over the horizon, and they wouldn't want to draw too much attention by flying in, so Light suggests they should land in the forest and walk the rest of the way. Although with Gold's magnificent armor, they are going to stand out either way. As the three are walking through the forest, they come upon a scene of a human tradesman being robbed by a bunch of dwarves, and while they would have preferred to stay out of sight until they got to the city, Gold's armor comes with inbuilt sparkle animations, so the bandits immediately notice him. They then try robbing him as well, but that doesn't go so well for them, and the dwarves are all left tied up in the middle of the road. The two humans are extremely thankful that they have been saved, so they offer to give Light and the others a ride into the city as a gesture of gratitude. Along the way, the man's son talks about how amazing Gold was since he had never seen someone take out dwarves so easily before. The man assumes they must be a famous group of adventurers, but Light tells him they actually aren't even registered yet. The man is shocked to hear this, but he tells them that if they really want to register as adventurers, then Dagas is the right place to go since it has one of the biggest guilds around, and it's right near the border between the elf, dwarf, and human kingdoms. There are a fair number of humans who gather here, so it is one of the more accommodating cities for humanity. He was even able to open up a fairly successful human hotel there, and he invites Light and the others to stay there if they need a place to stay. A little while later, they arrive at Dagas, and Light and the others ask Colonel to drop them off by the city entrance since they want to walk the rest of the way. For Gold and Nemumu, this is their first time actually seeing a surface city, and they notice that there are a lot of shops around that sell armor and weapons. But Light tells them that's just because there are a lot of adventurers here. Not to mention that the Dwarf Kingdom is close by, and those guys specialize in blacksmithing, so of course they'd sell their wares here. Once the group arrives at the guild, Nemumu notices that all the humans seem to scatter whenever someone from a different race walks by, and Light takes that as a sign that humans are treated poorly in this city as well. Even if it isn't immediately obvious, he heads to the front desk to register, and as usual, he's required to start out at F rank, so Light is going to have to do a few quests to raise his rank later. But before that, they need to find a place to stay, and Light recalls Colonel mentioning that he owns a hotel, so he and the others decide to head there. Colonel is surprised to see Light again and asks what he can do for him, so Light says he has a special request to make. He tells Colonel that he would like to rent out the entire top floor of this building, and under no circumstances should anyone, even Colonel's staff, be allowed to enter. As payment, he plops a bag full of gold coins down on the table, and Colonel is left speechless because he doesn't know what to say. Light says he can pay more money if this isn't enough, but Colonel tells him this is already 10 times more than enough. He says he can't accept this kind of money from the man who saved his life earlier, but Light insists, so Colonel eventually accepts the generous offer and says he will get the rooms ready as soon as possible. A little while later, Light and the others head upstairs, and he takes out a few perception-blocking spell cards and casts them on the room to ensure that no one will be able to eavesdrop. He can finally relax without having to worry about someone spying on him, so he pulls up a chair and takes a seat so he can rest. While Light is seated, Nemumu speaks up and tells him that while she is aware that he is very powerful, and that he chose to become an adventurer here to gather information, there is always a risk that he might get hurt on the surface, so she thinks it would be safer if Light returned to the dungeon city and let them handle things here on their own. Light is a nice person, but what Nemumu just suggested is basically trying to sideline him in his own revenge plot, and that pisses him off to the extreme because she's essentially saying she thinks he's too incompetent to pull it off. Nemumu immediately realizes that she screwed up, so she begs Light to forgive her insolence, but it's too late for that. He looks like he might actually kill Nemumu for what she said, and Gold can tell that things are getting really tense, so he laughs and tells Light that Nemumu simply doesn't understand the appeal of revenge. He tells her that Light wants to exact his vengeance with his own two hands without any middleman, and that's a noble cause to work towards. Hearing Gold's lighthearted banter makes Light realize that he may have gone too far, so he gets down and apologizes to Nemumu for letting his emotions get the better of him, since he knows she only said that out of concern for his safety. But Nemumu acknowledges that this was her fault for stepping out of line with her comments, so she begs him to allow her to pledge her allegiance to him once more. Light really doesn't think that's necessary, but he agrees to let her do it anyway, so Nemumu gently lifts his foot and kisses it. In this world, a kiss to the foot is the greatest show of respect one can show towards a leader, but Light has never really been a fan of this custom, especially with how awkward it was to have all his subordinates kiss his feet one after the other when he first summoned them. Even Gold acknowledges that it's kind of weird, especially since Nemumu looks like she's enjoying it way too much. The next morning, Light and the others head for the dungeon, and as they are walking through town, a lot of people start to stare because Gold has more bling than a SoundCloud rapper, and Nemumu looks really pretty. Although the only thing they have to say about Light is that he looks weird in that mask, but that does fit his dark persona, so it doesn't bother him. There's a long line of people waiting to get into the dungeon, but Gold notices that there don't seem to be any elves here at all. Light tells him that's because the elves and the dwarves are currently in a dispute over who owns this dungeon, so they tend to avoid each other. Nemumu praises Light for always having the perfect answer to any question, and he appreciates the compliment, but he asks her if she really needs to stand so close all the time because her chest is squishing up against the back of his head. She tells him it's her job to keep him safe at all times, so she needs to be as close as possible, and before Light can argue, he notices 3 people cut in front of the line. The little one is most likely a servant, and the second one seems like someone with moderate training, but as for the guy in front, Light can tell that he carries all of his movements are sharp and precise, even with the bulky weapon on his back. He is without a doubt a seasoned fighter, and a few of the other humans are too scared to confront him, since they probably get cut down for speaking. However, Light doesn't have to worry about that, so he confronts the elf and tells him it's rude to cut in line like that. The elf becomes enraged when he realizes a human is daring to speak to him, so he reaches for his sword, but the elder he's with tells him it's not worth causing a commotion or something like this, so the warrior agrees to go to the back of the line. However, as he walks past Light, he warns him that he will make sure he regrets disrespecting him like that. Once the elf is gone, the rest of the humans in line praise Light for standing up to that bully, and the kids from earlier come over to personally thank him since they couldn't work up the courage to do so. Light tells them there's no need to thank him since he was only doing it out of self-interest, but they are still thankful. Just then, one of the kids speaks up and asks Gold if his armor is really made out of gold since everyone here is curious, but before Gold can say anything, Nemumu tells them that none of Gold's armor is actually made of gold, otherwise it'd be too weak to offer any protection. The kid is then about to ask if Gold is just wearing it for attention then, but his friends stop him because it'd be a rude question to ask. However, Gold explains that he really does just wear it for attention, since there's no better color to represent the shining example he sets as a knight. The kids ask Light and the others if this is their first time heading into the dungeon, and Light confirms this, but he asks them how they knew. The kids explain that this floor is quite expansive, so adventurers often have to camp inside, but Light's party didn't bring any camping gear with them, so he figured they must have never been inside before. Just then, the guard calls for the next party to head inside, so the kids say goodbye and run into the dungeon together. Meanwhile, Light and the others are wondering if they should start carrying fake luggage around, since even though they have everything they need stored in an item box, they wouldn't want people mistaking them for noobs. A little while later, it's their turn to enter the dungeon, and this is Light's first time entering one aside from the Abyss. Dungeons are filled with mana that gets stronger the deeper you go, and it often leads to the creation of things like monsters and traps, so the inside of a dungeon is practically its own world. Once they arrive on the first floor, Light casts concealment magic on all of them so enemies can't track them down, and they all start flying towards the second floor. Meanwhile, that elf from before is busy taking his anger out on a bunch of orcs because he can't believe a human would dare to speak to him in such a manner. His name is Keto, and he says he is a legendary hero from the Elf Kingdom with the blood of a master flowing through his veins, so he deserves respect. He says that would never have happened if his level wasn't so low, but Yanni tells him that a level of 1,500 is already way higher than the usual level cap for elves, but Keto says it's not enough because he needs enough power to obliterate all the fools who mocked him. Yanni tells him he sympathizes because he also wants to get revenge on the idiots who refused to acknowledge his research and exiled him, so he would be more than happy to use that research to help Keto level up even further. Meanwhile, Light and the others have already made it down to the third floor, and they just finished dealing with a large horde of orcs. Light suggests they should start heading back now since they've gotten enough proof for the guild already, and that fight left him pretty dirty, so he wants to take a bath. As soon as Nemu hears that, she offers to wash every inch of Light's body for him once they get back, but he doesn't respond. On the way back, Light and the others run into the kids from earlier, so they head down to meet up with them, but all of a sudden they hear a lot of noise coming from the forest and dozens of wolves come running out. The kids tell Light they need to retreat since they won't be able to fight the wolves, but Light tells them the wolves aren't what they need to worry about because there's an even bigger threat heading their way, a giant quad-scythe mantis. This was the end of episode 5. Subscribe to not miss the next part.